Right now, somewhere, someone is describing you. Not your face, not your title, your character. And that conversation, the one you'll never hear, is shaping your future more than almost anything you say about yourself. Research shows people convert just a few repeated behaviors into fixed judgments about who you are. So the question becomes, what patterns are they actually tracking? When we observe someone, our brains do not simply record movements. They immediately search for motive. This mental reflex, which social psychologists call attribution theory, is the process of inferring the unseen reasons behind visible actions. If a colleague misses a deadline, we see more than an unfinished task. We immediately calculate whether the failure was caused by external circumstances, like an overwhelming workload, or by something internal, like a lack of discipline. Our minds, however, carry a built-in bias. Known as the fundamental attribution error, this tendency causes observers to overcredit a person's character while ignoring the situational pressures they might be facing. A single mistake is easily blamed on personal flaws rather than bad luck. When an action is repeated, this bias hardens. If that same colleague misses a second or third deadline, especially across different projects or in different settings, our perception shifts. We stop viewing the behavior as a series of isolated events. Instead, the mind uses this consistency across contexts to draw a permanent conclusion about a person's stable traits. Once a pattern forms, one-off explanations lose their power. If someone is consistently late, a sudden traffic jam is no longer accepted as a valid excuse. It is merely viewed as further proof of an unreliable nature. This is the exact moment reputation solidifies. Observers stop seeing individual incidents and instead start seeing identity. When others assess this identity in our absence, they run our past behavior through a quiet, almost automatic checklist. This evaluation relies on three foundational pillars of trust: ability, benevolence, and integrity. In the minds of colleagues and managers, these academic concepts translate into simple, pragmatic questions. First, there is the question of capability. Can this person actually deliver? This is where reliability is measured, not by intentions, but by consistent, visible follow-through. Second, observers ask about intent. Do they care about the group or only themselves? This is benevolence. It is built when communication is proactive, keeping others informed rather than leaving them guessing in a vacuum of silence. Transparent updates signal respect, transforming a transactional working relationship into a partnership. The third question focuses on character. Does their behavior match their stated values? This is integrity, the strict alignment between what is promised and what is done. When these three questions are answered positively over time, repeated steadiness takes over. A single prompt reply or one successful project is merely a data point. But when these actions are repeated across weeks and months, they harden into expectations. This predictable pattern is the architecture of reputation. It gives others the confidence to advocate for us, assign responsibilities, and trust our judgment, even when we are not there to defend ourselves. At HubSpot, internal culture studies show that employee trust scores and promotion rates correlate directly with routine, quiet signals of reliability. The behaviors that carry the most weight are often the most ordinary: maintaining calendar transparency, acknowledging communications quickly, and providing timely status updates. These low-cost signals are highly effective because they are difficult to fake over long periods. In a 2024 internal case study, Senior Product Manager Jenna Lee showed how these daily habits translate into professional capital. Her standing grew from steady, day-to-day execution rather than high-stakes theater or self-promotion. She earned peer confidence by consistently hitting sprint goals, posting daily progress, and flagging project obstacles early. This steady visibility answered the questions of capability and integrity long before any formal review. Because her colleagues could easily anticipate her performance, they actively advocated for her advancement in her absence. This collective confidence resulted in 2 promotions within 3 years. Lee's path reveals a fundamental rule of the workplace. A reliable worker earns trust by being predictable in the right way, and the most resilient reputations are built from behaviors never intended to impress, but designed simply to deliver. In the private sphere, reputation is measured in the emotional residue of emergencies. While professional reliability is built on expected consistency, personal loyalty is defined by sudden, unprompted presence. When a crisis strikes, our cognitive filters drop. and the actions of those who show up are retained permanently in memory. This is where quiet, unplanned support leaves the most lasting imprint. In 2026, Brittany Buck's home was destroyed by a devastating fire. Within minutes, volunteer Charlie Sharp arrived at the scene. He did not arrive with a calculated script, but simply asked, "What do you need?" and stood by her side. Buck later described him as the person who dropped everything when she had nothing left. This single act of presence created a durable memory that outlasted the emergency. Sharp did not publicize his action, but Buck did. Years later, she retold the story for the StoryCorps Archive, which was broadcast on NPR. This retelling carried a private act of benevolence into a wider reputation for reliability and care. In personal networks, we rarely construct our own character portraits. Instead, our reputation is carried across social circles by the voices of those we helped, who retell our actions in rooms where we are absent. Once a reputation is established, changing it requires confronting a set of deeply ingrained cognitive biases. The human brain naturally favors cognitive shorthand over constant reassessment. Through the primacy effect, early interactions form a psychological anchor, disproportionately shaping subsequent judgments. Once this initial narrative settles, confirmation bias begins to filter new evidence, subtly bending new facts to fit the existing story while ignoring contradictory details. Compounding this friction is the negativity bias, which causes observers to weigh a single mistake far more heavily than a long, established record of positive behavior. This cognitive resistance explains why rational explanations or sudden changes in behavior rarely alter an established perspective overnight. Instead, the mind actively works to keep its social evaluations intact. Rebuilding a shattered reputation requires a sustained, visible shift in behavior. In September 1982, 7 people died in Chicago after taking cyanide-laced Tylenol. Chief Executive Officer James Burke bypassed standard corporate defense protocols, immediately recalling 31 million bottles and warning the public. Johnson & Johnson then introduced triple-sealed packaging, establishing a new industry standard. By late 1983, Tylenol's market share, which had plummeted to 7%, climbed back to 35%. This recovery succeeded because the apology was backed by immediate, costly corrective action. In contrast, Wells Fargo presents the long damage of systemic erosion. Beginning in 2011, branch employees, pressured by daily cross-selling quotas, quietly opened over 2 million unauthorized consumer accounts. When the practice became public in 2016, the scandal triggered massive fines and executive resignations. Despite subsequent public apology campaigns, the bank struggled to regain trust. Because the unethical behavior had been a normalized pattern for years, cognitive bias kept the scandal in the public eye, proving that entrenched cultural habits outlive simple corporate rebranding. Ultimately, reputation is not an image we control, but the emotional residue of our daily choices. It is the psychological record others keep of our reliability. We build it in the quietest moments, but its weight is felt forever. What legacy of trust are you building? Let us know below.